In 1936, the first electric line reached a Missouri farmhouse, and within a year the family had torn out the stone spring house their grandfather built by hand. They didn't need it anymore. A refrigerator hummed in the kitchen now. But here's the twist. That spring house would cost you $18,000 to rebuild today, and number 7 on this list is nearly impossible to reproduce at all, because the men who knew how are gone. Number 3 was ripped out of almost every farm in America, and restoration masons now charge more for it than a new pickup truck. These 30 features vanished in a single generation, traded for switches and wall outlets. Nobody thought they'd ever matter again. Hit subscribe, then let's begin with number 30. Number 30, the ash house. Tucked behind the kitchen door of nearly every homestead stood a small brick or stone shed where wood ashes were saved all winter long. Housewives shoveled the cold ashes from the cook stove into it daily, knowing that lye leached from those ashes made the year's soap and helped cure the hams. The little building stayed bone dry, its floor sloped so rainwater never spoiled the store. When electric ranges arrived in the 1940s, the ashes stopped coming, and the ash house lost its purpose overnight. Families pulled them down for the brick or let them collapse. Today, a mason who still lays a proper corbelled ash house roof will quote you $4,000, and most won't take the job at all. Number 29, the well sweep. Before the windmill and long before the pump, water came up by a well sweep, a tall forked post with a long pole balanced across it like a seesaw. A bucket hung from one end, a heavy stone counterweight from the other, so a child could lift 40 pounds of water with 2 fingers. Farm diaries from the 1880s describe the creak of the sweep at dawn, the splash far below, the cold rope burning small hands in January. It was ancient technology, simple and nearly free. Electric pressure pumps erased it completely by the 1950s. Almost none survive. A timber frame restorer who can raise an authentic oak sweep and rig it properly now charges upward of $6,000 for the work. Number 28, the cellar dumbwaiter. In 2-story farmhouses, a hand-cranked dumbwaiter ran from the cool cellar straight up to the pantry, hauling crocks of butter, jars of milk, and covered dishes without a soul climbing the stairs. Grandmothers loaded it with the Sunday roast to keep cool, then cranked it back up minutes before the family sat down. The rope and pulley shaft was built into the wall when the house was framed. When refrigerators made the cold cellar pointless, the shafts were sealed up and forgotten, plastered right over. Restoring one means opening a wall, rebuilding the car and its guides, and rigging new counterweights. Carpenters who specialize in old mill work now bill $8,000 to $12,000 for a working restoration. Number 27, transom windows. Above every interior door hung a small hinged window, the transom, tilted open on a brass rod to let hot air drift from room to room on still August nights. In a house with no fans and no cooling, these little windows were the whole ventilation system, pulling a breeze from the shaded north side clear through the parlor. Children learned to read the house by them, open transoms meaning the grown-ups wanted air to move. Once ceiling fans and window units arrived, families painted the transoms shut and eventually replaced the doors entirely. Reproducing the wavy old glass, the cast hardware, and the fitted frames now runs several $100s per opening, and a houseful climbs past $4,000 fast. Number 26, louvered gable vents. Every well-built barn and farmhouse wore wooden louvers high in the gable ends, angled slats that let the attic breathe while keeping rain and birds out. In the barn, they drew the heat and moisture up off the hay, and a wet, poorly vented mow could smolder into a fire. Farmers checked them each spring, replacing cracked slats with hand-planed cedar. When electric attic fans and metal ridge vents took over, the old louvers were ripped out and covered with plywood or aluminum. Hand-built, correctly pitched wooden louvers sized for a full barn gable are custom millwork today, and a matched pair for a large bank barn easily costs $3,000 to $5,000. Number 25. The cellar bulkhead. Sloping out from the foundation, the bulkhead was the slanted double-door entrance to the cellar, thick timber or later steel that let a farmer roll barrels of apples and sacks of potatoes straight down into cold storage without carrying them through the house. Delivery men dropped coal down it. Children hid beneath it during storms. The stone-lined stairway beneath was laid dry, fitted without mortar, so cold air pooled at the bottom year-round. As furnaces and freezers replaced cellar storage, families filled the stairwells with dirt and paved over them. Rebuilding a proper stone bulkhead stair, waterproofed and correctly graded, is heavy masonry work that runs contractors $7,000 and up. Number 24. The spring box. Where a cold spring bubbled up near the house, farmers sank a wooden or stone box into the flow. A small tank, the water ran through constantly, holding a steady 50 degrees. Crocks of cream and jars of milk sat submerged to their necks, kept sweet by nothing but moving water. Oral histories from Appalachia recall the moss on the stones, the flick of a crawdad, the ache of reaching bare-armed into that water on a hot day. The electric refrigerator made it obsolete, and the boxes rotted or were bulldozed. Locating the old spring, rebuilding the box, and replumbing the flow is specialist stonework now, and restoration runs $5,000 to $9,000. Number 23. The screened cooling porch. On the shaded east side of the house, a screened porch did double duty, a place to sleep on stifling nights, and a place to cool pies, crocks, and just churned butter out of the sun. The screens kept the flies off, while the cross breeze did the work of a refrigerator. Families ate breakfast there in summer, snapped beans there in the evening, and left the milk pail there to cool before the morning haul to town. AIR conditioning made the porch just another room, and thousands were enclosed into dens and mudrooms. Rebuilding a period-correct screened porch with proper posts, screening, and roofline now costs $15,000 to $25,000. Number 22. The corn crib. Standing on stone piers with slatted wooden walls, the corn crib let ear corn dry in the open air, the gaps between boards pulling a breeze through the whole crop while keeping the rain off. Farmers built them narrow on purpose, no wider than a good draft could reach the center. Rats were fought with the stone piers and tin collars. A well-filled crib meant a farm could feed its hogs and horses clear through to spring. Electric grain dryers and steel bins made the slatted crib useless, and most were torn down for the weathered lumber, which now sells at a premium. A faithfully rebuilt timber crib runs $10,000 to $15,000. Number 21. The cold pantry, or buttery. Built into the coolest north corner of the house, the buttery was a windowless little room with thick walls and stone shelves, kept cold by the earth behind it. Here the butter firmed, the milk soured slow into clabber, the pies waited, and the crocks of lard held all winter. Housewives ran the household from this room, and a good buttery was a point of quiet pride. When the refrigerator arrived, the buttery became a broom closet or was knocked out to widen the kitchen. Rebuilding one with real stone shelving and the proper insulated masonry wall tied into the foundation is careful work that costs contractors $8,000 to $12,000. Number 20. The creamery, or cream room. On dairy farms, a separate cool room, sometimes its own small building, held the cream separator and the shallow setting pans where milk stood until the cream rose. Everything was scrubbed white, the floors sloped to a drain, the water hauled from the spring to keep the crocks cold. Wives and daughters ran it, skimming and churning, turning milk into the butter and cream that brought cash at the town store. The electric refrigerator and the tanker truck that hauled bulk milk killed the farm creamery in a generation. Restoring one, with its drains, cooling troughs, and scrubbed hard surfaces, is a specialty renovation that regularly runs $15,000 or more. Number 19. The wood cook stove and its warming oven. The cast iron range wasn't just for cooking, it was the heart of the house, throwing heat all winter, heating the irons, drying the mittens, and keeping a kettle forever at a simmer. Above the firebox sat the warming oven, a high closet where biscuits and coffee stayed hot for a man coming in late from the field. Children did homework by its warmth. The electric range, clean and cool, pushed it out to the barn or the scrap pile in the 1940s and 50s. A restored antique range, re-nickeled and food-safe, with the chimney rebuilt to draw properly, now costs $6,000 to $10,000 all in. Number 18. The storm cellar. Out on the plains, a separate underground cellar, the cyclone cellar, sat a short run from the back door, its heavy, slanted door the only thing above ground. Families dove into it when the sky turned green and stored potatoes, onions, and home-canned goods on its shelves the rest of the year. Oral histories from Kansas and Oklahoma recall whole families huddled by lantern light while the wind screamed over the door. Electric weather radios and basements under new houses made the standalone cellar seem old-fashioned, and thousands caved in from neglect. Digging, lining, and roofing a proper masonry storm cellar to code now runs a homeowner $10,000 to $18,000. Number 17. The beehive bake oven. Before the cook stove, bread came from a domed brick oven, the beehive, built into the kitchen chimney or standing in the yard. The housewife burned a hot fire inside until the bricks glowed, raked out the coals, and slid in a week's worth of loaves and pies to bake in the stored heat. The whole neighborhood knew baking day by the smell. It took skill and a full morning, and the electric range made it look like unbelievable labor, so the ovens were bricked shut and forgotten. A mason who can lay a true self-supporting brick dome is rare now, and a restored beehive oven costs $8,000 to $14,000. Number 16. The elevated water tank. Some prosperous farms pumped water, often by windmill, up into a tall wooden or steel tank on a tower, so gravity gave the house and barn running water without a single motor. The tank fed the kitchen, the stock troughs, even a crude shower. Children were warned off the ladder 100 times. It was ingenious, silent, and free to run once built. The electric pressure tank in the basement, small and hidden, made the tower a rusting eyesore, and nearly all came down for scrap. Rebuilding an authentic tank and tower system, engineered to stand and hold water, is major structural work that runs $20,000 and beyond. Number 15. The well house, or pump house. Over the good well stood a small, snug building, the well house, sheltering the pump from freezing and often housing a bench, the cream cans, and the milk pails set to cool in the seep of cold water. In summer, it was the coldest spot on the whole place, and children were sent there for the butter. The stone or plank floor stayed wet and clean. When electric pumps moved indoors and pressure lines ran everywhere, the well house lost its job and was torn down for the lumber. A rebuilt period well house over a restored dug well now costs a homeowner $9,000 to $13,000. Number 14. The hay hood and hay track. High on the barn's peak jutted the hay hood, a small roofed extension sheltering the steel track and the great hay fork that lifted loose hay off the wagon and swung it deep into the mow. A horse walking away from the barn did the pulling, and a trip rope dropped the load exactly where the farmer wanted it. It was the difference between a day of pitchforking and an afternoon. Balers and elevators made the whole ride useless, and the tracks were sold for scrap, the hoods left to rot. Restoring a working hay track, fork, and hood, safely rehung, is rigging work that runs $7,000 to $12,000. Number 13. The wooden stave silo. Before concrete and steel, farmers built silos from tongue-and-groove wooden staves cinched with iron hoops, tall cylinders that stored chopped corn as silage to feed the herd through winter. The staves swelled tight when the wet silage went in, sealing the whole tower without a drop of mortar. A good wooden silo was a mark of a modern, prosperous farm in 1910. Newer materials and electric unloaders made them obsolete, and most were pulled down or left to lean and fall. The coopering skill to build one barely survives. A restored or reconstructed wooden stave silo now costs $15,000 to $25,000. Number 12. The farm, ice pond. On northern farms, a low spot was dammed into a shallow pond for one purpose, to freeze thick each winter so the ice could be cut, hauled, and packed away for summer. Whole families and neighbors turned out for the ice harvest, sawing great blue blocks and sledding them to the ice house. Diaries recall the ring of the saws, the shouts, the horse's breath hanging in the cold. Electric refrigeration ended the harvest, and the ponds silted in, grew over, and disappeared back into pasture. Re-excavating, lining, and damming a proper ice or farm pond, engineered to hold, is earthwork that regularly runs a landowner $10,000 to $20,000. Number 11. The barn cupola. Crowning the barn roof stood the cupola, a little louvered tower that looked like decoration but did real work, drawing the hot, damp air up and out of the hay mow and the stalls below. Good ventilation kept the hay from molding and the animals from sickening, and a farmer who skimped on his cupola paid for it in spoiled feed. They were often the handsomest thing on the place, topped with a weather vane. Electric barn fans made them unnecessary, and thousands were torn off during re-roofing and thrown away. A hand-built, correctly vented cupola sized for a full barn now costs $5,000 to $9,000. Number 10. The cistern. Beside the house, a great underground tank of brick or stone, the cistern caught rainwater off the roof through the gutters, storing soft, lime-free water for washing hair, laundry, and dishes. Hard well water made soap useless, but cistern water lathered like silk, and every housewife knew the difference. A hand pump at the kitchen sink drew it up. When treated municipal or pressurized well water reached the farm, the cisterns were capped, filled with rubble, and forgotten under the yard. Restoring a cistern, cleaning it, Sealing the masonry and replumbing the catchment is confined space specialty work that runs $8,000 to $14,000 today. Number 9. The open dug well and hand pump. The hand-dug well, sometimes 6 feet across and stone-lined all the way down, was the first thing a family made when they broke ground. The whole homestead built around it. A cast-iron pitcher pump stood over it, and priming that pump on a cold morning was a daily ritual burned into every farm child's memory. The water tasted of stone and stayed cold in August. Drilled wells and electric submersible pumps made the shallow dug well seem primitive, and most were filled in for safety once children and livestock roamed. Reopening and safely restoring a stone-lined dug well with a working pitcher pump now costs $10,000 to $16,000. Number 8. The sleeping porch. Built onto the second story, screened on 3 sides, the sleeping porch was where the whole family carried their beds on suffocating summer nights, chasing whatever breeze the dark offered. It was the only relief a house had before cooling, and oral histories are full of the sounds of it: the crickets, the distant train, the murmur of parents 2 beds over. Children remember it as the best sleep of their lives. Central air conditioning made it a relic, and nearly everyone was enclosed into a bedroom or sewing room. Rebuilding an authentic wraparound sleeping porch with its posts, screening, and roof now costs a homeowner $20,000 to $30,000. Number 7. The milk house. Attached to the dairy barn stood the milk house, a small, scrubbed, whitewashed room where the fresh milk was cooled fast in a tank of running spring or well water and held until the hauler came. The floors were concrete and sloped to a drain, the walls washed spotless because the inspector and the family's whole income depended on clean milk. It ran on cold water and hard work, no electricity at all. Bulk electric coolers and refrigerated tanks replaced the water-cooled milk house entirely, and the old ones were gutted or torn down. Rebuilding a period milk house with its cooling trough, drains, and inspector-grade surfaces is exacting work that now costs $12,000 to $20,000, and few tradesmen still know the details. Number 6. The summer kitchen. Set apart from the main house or built as a back wing, the summer kitchen kept the brutal heat of canning and cooking out of the family's living space through July and August. Here, the tomatoes were put up, the corn blanched, the lard rendered, the hogs cut and salted, all the hot, steamy, greasy work that would have made the house unbearable. It had its own stove, its own big table, its own well of light and air. Electric ranges and air conditioning made a separate cooking building pointless, and most were torn down or turned into sheds. Restoring a true summer kitchen, chimney and stove and all, now runs $18,000 to $28,000. Number 5. The smokehouse. Squat and windowless, the smokehouse was where the year's meat was preserved. Hams and bacon and sausage hung from the rafters over a low, slow fire of hickory or apple wood for days on end. The whole farm's winter protein depended on getting the smoke right, and a family's reputation traveled on the flavor of its hams. The walls were black and fragrant with decades of it. Electric freezers made curing and smoking optional, a hobby instead of survival, and the smokehouses were abandoned or torn down. Rebuilding a proper smokehouse, tight enough to hold smoke and safe enough to use, with the right firebox and venting, costs $8,000 to $14,000 today. Number 4. The ice house. Half-buried and double-walled, packed with a foot of sawdust, the ice house held the winter's harvested ice deep into the following summer, sometimes clear to September. Blocks were dug out one at a time for the ice box in the kitchen, and the ice cream on the 4th of July. The cold, damp, sweet sawdust smell of it is one every farm child of that era remembers. It was the only refrigeration a farm had, and it worked without a watt of power. The electric refrigerator made the ice house and the whole harvest that filled it obsolete overnight, and they collapsed by the thousands. A reconstructed, insulated ice house now costs a landowner $12,000 to $18,000. Number 3, the root cellar. Dug into a hillside or under the house, lined with fieldstone laid dry by hand, the root cellar held the whole winter's food: bins of potatoes, carrots buried in sand, barrels of apples, shelves of home-canned jars, all kept at a steady 40 degrees by the earth alone. A family's survival through a hard winter was measured in the fullness of that cellar in October. The stonework took a mason a summer to lay right, and it never froze and never spoiled. Electric freezers and the grocery store made it unnecessary, and nearly everyone was filled in or caved. Rebuilding a stone-lined root cellar today, drained and vaulted correctly, costs $15,000 to $25,000 more than a new truck, and the masons who can do it are vanishing. Number 2, the spring house. Built low over a running spring, its floor a shallow channel of ice-cold water, the spring house was the crown of a good farm's cold storage, holding the milk, the cream, the butter, the eggs, and the melons all summer without a lick of power. The stone walls stayed cool and damp. The water sang across the floor, and reaching into that current on a 100-degree day was the closest thing to magic a child knew. Generations were built around it. The electric refrigerator ended 1,000 years of the spring house in a single decade, and families tore theirs out for the stone. Rebuilding one, finding the spring, laying the channel, matching the masonry, runs $18,000 to $30,000. Number 1, the water pumping windmill, and crowning them all, the tall steel windmill that turned prairie wind into water, pumping from deep wells into the stock tanks and the house, standing 60 feet over the farmstead as the single most recognizable silhouette in rural America. It ran on nothing but the wind, day and night, free forever once it stood, and the whole farm listened for its steady clank as proof the water was flowing. Children climbed it against every warning. Men cursed it in the cold when the gears froze. When the electric submersible pump arrived with rural electrification, silent and reliable, the windmill became a relic almost overnight, and hundreds of thousands were dropped, cut up, and sold for scrap. Restoring one today, a rebuilt head, new tower, and working pump costs $25,000 to $40,000, and the crews who can safely raise one are down to a handful. Across all 30, from the humble ash house to the towering windmill, the story is the same. Electricity walked onto the American farm and made a century of hard-won ingenuity look like drudgery overnight. Families didn't hate these features, they simply didn't need them anymore, so out they came, for the stone and the lumber and the space. Nobody thought they'd be worth anything again. Now, the spring houses and root cellars and windmills that a farmer once built with his own 2 hands cost a fortune to bring back, if you can even find someone who remembers how. So look around your own place. Check the north corner, the hillside, the barn peak. You might be standing on something your great-grandparents built to last and never thought to save. Tell me in the comments which one your family still has.